So friends, welcome once again. This is Harjinder Gill, and today we have Mr. Stephen Duca, who's leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. He's with us. Mr. Stephen, welcome to the Harjinder Gill Show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
So Stephen, let's start with your opening remarks. And first of all, thank you so much for sparing some time for our show. And I know it's a very crucial time for all the Ontarians and for all the Canadians. Even I would say COVID-19 is affecting each and every country, each and every individual. So let's start with your opening remarks about that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Obviously now for almost a full year, this pandemic, this virus has disrupted our lives. I know here in Ontario, it's been extremely difficult for millions of families. So many things that we've not been able to do over the last, now again, close to a year. We haven't been able to see our loved ones or to go to our places of worship, or some people have lost their jobs, they've lost their livelihoods, they've lost their businesses, and of course, thousands of Ontarians have tragically lost their lives to the pandemic, and my heart goes out to their grieving families. Obviously, we're in a stage now where the numbers are still scary. We have to remain vigilant at all times and listen to what we are being told to do by public health leaders, but we also have a vaccine that's arrived, it's safe and effective. We just all want to see the provincial government get the vaccine deployed as safely and as quickly and effectively as possible so we can get our lives back. And so I'm hoping that will, obviously, like all of your listeners, that will happen sooner rather than later. And this is a point in time where people really just have to keep paying attention to the advice. And even though people are tired and fatigued, we just got to stick together and we'll get through this.
Right. So are you satisfied with the arrangements made by the government of Ontario?
You know, I think in particular during the second wave, so from September, October until the present time, I have been deeply disappointed and repeatedly disappointed by Doug Ford's performance. Mm-hmm. We know that in long-term care homes across Ontario, across every major municipality, including Mississauga, Brampton, Toronto, that there are most of the deaths from COVID-19 have been our elderly. And many months ago, last May, the Canadian Armed Forces produced a report that told the government what the problem looked like and how desperate the situation was. Doug Ford promised back in the summer of last year that he would invest what was needed to fix it. Right. And here we are months later, and the numbers are still horrible in nursing homes. The picture is still scary, and people are still dying. That's one example of how I think Doug Ford has dropped the ball, and I think he's betrayed the people of Ontario.
So you don't think they are taking enough measures?
I don't. And we also know, thanks to the Independent Financial Accountability Officer, that Doug Ford has billions of dollars in pandemic relief that he's received mostly from the federal government that he has refused to invest. And so whether we're talking about our publicly funded schools, our long-term care homes, support for small businesses, measures like paid sick leave for workers in essential industries, all of these things and more, Doug Ford should be leading on, he should be active on, and he's just stubbornly and callously refused to do it.
Right. But even on the other side, people are still complaining that this lockdown and the measures taken by the government are killing them. It's even if we take an example, Mr. Roman Baber, who is a member of provincial parliament from PC Party from North York Centre, and he was sending a letter to the premier that this lockdown is deadlier than the COVID, and that's the complaint by the people and by the Ontarians, and they said the government is pushing hard to stop, and they're making their arrangements so hard, and their businesses are getting affected, their daily life is getting affected. So, and on the other side, you are telling that they are not taking enough measures.
So I saw the letter from Roman Baber. I know people are fatigued out there, but I think Roman is wrong. And I think people who feel fatigue and think that the lockdowns are not effective and are not doing the job properly are also wrong. Okay. What I would actually have recommended to Doug Ford, and in fact I did back in September and October, was that I feel he should have moved more quickly and he should have moved more decisively, like governments in other parts of the world, including Australia, did way back in the summer, way back in the fall. They were able to bring their numbers under control. And once the numbers are under control, you can reopen the economy. People can go back to a regular life. But look, this is a public health crisis. Thousands of Ontarians have lost their lives. Our hospitals are getting full. Our intensive care units at the hospitals are also getting full. And all we have to do is look south of the border to see what happens when you have politicians and other community leaders saying, let's just open everything up and let the Wild West reign. That doesn't work. There are hundreds of thousands of Americans who've lost their lives south of the border because of that approach.
Right.
I think Doug Ford should have moved more quickly. I think he should have been more decisive. And I think, sadly, Roman was wrong.
Okay. So friends, this is Mr. Stephen Del Duca with us. He's a leader of Ontario Liberal Party. And we are just discussing today's scenario with him. And Stephen, this is always a pretty good excuse by the politicians when they are not in the government, or when they are not in the power. They can blame the present government very easily. Let's say if you were the premier this time, then how would you have been dealing with this pandemic? What would be the different strategy or planning you were dealing with this time?
So it is true that opposition politicians spend more of their time criticizing than proposing alternatives. But I will say to you and also to your listeners, let's not forget that for 4 years I served in senior cabinet positions at Queen's Park in the last Liberal government.
Right.
I've been in the cabinet room. I've been part of the decision-making process. I have that experience. And I think experience and competence matter, especially during a crisis. For weeks now, I have said to Doug Ford publicly that he should have called on the federal government to ask them to send the military back into our nursing homes and help with the vaccination rollout. I have said repeatedly he should deliver on a provincially funded paid sick leave program, so essential workers who are not feeling well can stay home and stop the spread. I've said that he needs to stop delaying. So think back to prior to Christmas,
Right.
5 days before the lockdown, 5 days, Doug Ford said he would announce something and it would be scary. And then he waited 5 days.
Right.
And we know from all of the cell phone tracking data, public authorities know that all of the people traveling to different regions, visiting friends, going to shopping malls that were still open in those 5 days helped make the numbers scarier. When you're in a position of leadership in a crisis, you can't delay, you can't dither. And I also have called on Doug Ford to stop the inconsistent and confusing messaging.
Right.
So those are just some of the examples of things I believe Doug Ford should be doing and what I would be doing with my experience if I was premier today.
Right. So you have touched base about paid sick leave. So let's explore that point a little bit more. How would you be explaining that paid sick leave?
Absolutely. So we know in particular, again, during the second wave of the pandemic, that mayors across the GTA, so Patrick Brown, Bonnie Cromie, John Tory, my own regional mayors, 𝗚𝗿ecie𝘂𝗽𝗏 and others, all of the mayors of the GTA, public health leaders, every single opposition party leader, federal MPs, everybody has been telling Doug Ford there are thousands and thousands of workers who are in essential industries that are helping to keep our economy going and part of the supply chain. And many of them are ill. Many of them aren't feeling well. They have symptoms that could be COVID. You know what? Maybe some of them have even tested positive for COVID. They're still going to work. And the reason they're going to work is that many of them don't get paid that well. And so if they were to stay home, they don't have the financial security to support their family, to buy their groceries, to pay their rent. So we said to Doug Ford, those people, even though they're sick, they're still going to work and inadvertently spreading the virus instead of being able to stay home. So yes, there's a federal program in place, and that's Doug Ford's excuse, but why not step up with a provincial program that helps to complement the federal program, make it immediate, make it generous enough so they can make the right choice to stay at home, and actually be on the side of workers instead of what he's been doing.
All right. So what's your take on the schools? Do you think the schools needs to be shut down, or you have some different opinions?
So my wife and I are raising two daughters. Our older daughter is in grade 8, our younger daughter is in grade 4. They're learning from home right now. We live in Vaughan, and like thousands of other school kids, they're learning from home. And I think every parent in the perfect world wants their kids to be back at school because they miss their friends. They don't get the fresh air they should get. They don't get to socialize. And it's really tough on everybody when the kids are here at home. The problem is that for months now, Doug Ford has refused to make the investment in our schools that help keep the class sizes small enough and help provide the mental health supports and the supports for kids with special needs. All of that stuff Doug Ford's refused to do, which means that, you know, in the time that he's had, so the anxiety levels for lots of parents and for kids and educators is very, very high. And even this last break, this extended holiday break that the kids are on right now, being at home, I don't think Doug Ford and his team have done anything to make the situation safer in schools while they've had this time. I think they're just going to hope that when the schools eventually reopen, and every parent hopes it's sooner rather than later as long as their kids are safe, I think they're just hoping that everything will work out okay. And again, that's not the kind of leadership that we need during a crisis. So I'd like my daughters to be able to go back to school, but the most important thing for me as a father is that they're safe, that they're not going to get sick, that they're not going to make someone else sick because they're asymptomatic.
Right.
And frankly, with Doug Ford's system, we just don't know how that's going to play out.
Right. And just your comments on the small scale businesses, because normally when we talk on our radio shows and we are having that concern by so many business holders, and they said the big box or big stores are gaining the maximum benefit in these days during this COVID-19 era. But on the other side, the small businesses are going down day by day.
That's a great point. And when you asked me a second ago what I would be doing differently, I forgot to include this one. There's no reason for big box stores to still be selling non-essential items.
Yeah.
If I was premier today, yes, the big box stores could stay open, but only to sell groceries and pharmacy products, and that's it. Everything else should be shut down.
Yeah, even if small businesses are not able to sell those kind of items, then why the big box stores are selling those?
Yeah, precisely. I mean, that's precisely the point.
Do you have any plans, or do you have any kind of motion you are going to put for that? Because for now, this is already we are going through the lockdown, and until the next announcement, I think there's nothing going to be changed. So, do you think would there be any step taken by your side?
So we've been calling on the government to take this action. Doug Ford has refused to do so. And right now the legislature is not sitting. It's not scheduled to come back until February 16th.
Right.
But I can guarantee that when the legislature does resume, Ontario Liberal Caucus members will continue to speak passionately on behalf of small business owners across Ontario, because it is heartbreaking to see how many of them have suffered. My mom used to own her own small business. She had a store in downtown Toronto. I know how hard it is for small business owners to operate even at the best of times, and these are not the best of times. And so Doug Ford has really let them down as well.
Right. Okay. So Stephen, let's wind it up with the future plannings for the Liberal Party of Ontario, because this time Ontario Liberal Party is in a very weak situation. Are you satisfied, or are you planning something differently to come up with a big bang?
So obviously we are a party that is still rebuilding. We came off the 2018 election and lost very badly, but I'm excited about the progress that we've made, even though there's been a pandemic. The progress we've made around nominating our candidates, starting our fundraising machinery up again, and most importantly, we're about to launch our platform consultation process. Mm-hmm. And my friends and colleagues, Michael Coteau and Kate Graham, are co-sharing that process. I think we're going to put together a very compelling and relatable platform that we'll put in front of the people of Ontario in the next election. And most importantly, we're just going to work really, really hard to earn the trust of the people of this province.
So what would be the process like for the nomination, especially because normally there are big nominations, and particularly when we talk about Brampton ridings. What are your plans for this term?
Yeah, so we've already nominated candidates both in Brampton and in Mississauga. We still have a few ridings left in Peel Region to deal with. Anybody who's interested in running for a nomination can visit our website at ontarioliberal.ca, and there's a lot of information there that helps a person understand what the process looks like. We're up to almost 25 candidates. In the next couple of days, we'll be at 25 candidates nominated out of the 124 that we need. Right. So we're working really hard. It's a great group. We are more than 50% female right now. We are more than 50% people of color right now. Lots of young candidates. I'm really excited about what our team of candidates will look like heading into the next election campaign. And they bring a new kind of dynamic energy to this process that I think our party needs very badly.
So most of the riding will have a fair nomination process, or the most of the candidates would be chosen by the acclaim. They will be acclaimed by the party.
Well, every nomination goes through a fair and open process, except the leader in our party constitution. The leader does have the power to appoint 5 candidates, right. Up to 5 candidates. But every other nomination contest goes through the same process. It's open, it's transparent. Obviously, sometimes people win, sometimes people lose, and the people who lose Obviously, they might not like the outcome, but it is the nature of how nominations unfold in a party. But I'm very excited about the kind of candidates, the caliber of candidates we've produced so far, and I'm looking forward to lots of new candidates coming on very soon.
So anything specific in your mind for Brampton ridings?
Like I said, we've already nominated some candidates in the Brampton ridings. I know we still have at least one to go, maybe more than one to go. It's a good group. It's women, it's men, it's young, it's diverse. I think it's exciting. It's exciting for Brampton, which is a very fast-growing community with lots of needs, particularly when it comes to things like healthcare and hospital care. Obviously, essential workers and the sick pay I talked about a second ago. More transit needs, and I say that as a former transportation minister. I know that very well. I love Brampton because it's a neighbor to me. I live in Vaughan, as I said earlier in this conversation, and I want Brampton, Vaughan, and the entire GTA to grow in the right way.
That's great. So, Stephen, we'll close with your final remarks.
I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to be on the program today. I want to wish everybody all the very best for a safe and healthy 2021. Again, we are all in this together, and I know Ontarians, we will find a way to get through this crisis and come out even stronger and more resilient on the other side.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So looking forward to talk to you again in future. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you for your time.
For all our latest updates, please subscribe G Media Group YouTube channel and press the bell icon.